Welcome back, one and all, to the Always Bayern Chelsea show. This is another special video episode. We are kind of doing a little series here of season recap, end of the season stuff, and of course, we still have the Club World Cup, which Jim and I here will be at, so we'll give you great first-hand boots on the ground coverage for that. And before we begin, I do just want to plug, subscribe to the YouTube channel, of course, Always Bayern Chelsea. That's where you'll see all this video content, and I just released a player tier ranking video episode for Bayern Munich. Every player on this season, I ranked them in a tiered system from MVP to flop. And then this video, if you haven't guessed by whatever I end up titling it, is going to be a super fun video where we watch along. Jim and I, we look at our predictions from the beginning of the year to see which ones were utter disasters and which ones actually turned out to be true. So, Jim, if there's anything you want to say, take it away.
A lot of good content right now, a lot of good interaction with you, the listener, the viewer, fans out there. So comment on all these videos, give us your thoughts, whether it's Danny's tier rankings, which I'm sure were perfect and probably can't even comment on because they're so good, but give a comment anyway and watch our stuff. Go on TikTok. A lot of good interactions over there with a lot of different people, even the people that don't like that we can support two teams. But yeah, really appreciate all the support and can't wait to kind of watch this video over. I did see it ahead of time before we decided we were going to watch it live, but it's still going to be interesting because some of the predictions, let's just say, were not good.
Yeah, totally. First of all, I'll piggyback off what you said and agree that I love interacting with you guys in the comments. I respond to all of them here on YouTube. And yeah, really just it's awesome. That's what it's about, building a community. So thanks again for that. And I'd appreciate it. Yeah, you can even laugh at me in the comments here because I know for a fact I had some predictions at the beginning of the year that were let's just say not remotely close to the mark. So, but hey, that's football. Really, anything can happen. I like going out on a limb and trying to call something where, some of the stuff, we actually got spot on, if I remember correctly, and some of it we didn't. I haven't seen all of this video since we published it, which was, yeah, before the season. So I'm might be in for a wild ride, and it might turn into one of those like cringe watch-alongs where you like watch yourself and cringe. But hey, I know I at least predicted Bayern to win the Bundesliga, so I got one thing right at least.
That's true. You certainly did. And I think we'll see that very early on in the video. There's a few things right. So I'm definitely excited here.
Yeah, should we jump right in? Do you have anything else you want to say up front?
Only thing I'll add, just because it's top of mind as I'm scrolling Twitter, is that, and we've discussed this relentlessly, but Liam Delap officially a Chelsea player now. So just excited about that.
Yeah, he looks good in a Chelsea kit, that's for sure.
Chelsea
Um,
gets fire.
yeah, I like their home kit too. We should do a tiered ranking episode about all of the kits when they come out, for sure.
We should. We should.
All right.
Yeah, so let's talk about some predictions. The most important is where they will finish in the table. First, we'll start with Bayern. Where do you think they'll finish in the Bundesliga this season?
All right, we'll start with Bundesliga. This is my most exciting thing. Bayern's going to win the Bundesliga this year. All right? Might sound crazy. No disrespect to Leverkusen. I think they're an incredible squad. I think they'll be incredible again. But I don't think they'll be able to recreate the no-loss season that they had last year. And I think that Bayern's going to be incredibly hungry in the Bundesliga. And I don't think that they're going to lose as many of those matches that they lost last year where it's like, how did you lose that match? How did you go up 2-0 and then concede 3 goals to, I don't know, Heidenheim or something? I don't see that happening again with Vincent Kompany's style of play. Granted, a lot can happen. Guys can get injured, whatever. Bayern's going to win the Bundesliga. Kane's going to win his first trophy. There it is. The initial prediction, the biggest prediction you could say, Bayern Munich wins the Bundesliga. I was right. I was pretty much spot on with everything I said there. They didn't lose a lot of the matches that they would have lost last year, and Leverkusen did not keep up their invincible run.
Spot on. Not crazy at all to say. I also have them winning the Bundesliga. Frankly, it would be embarrassing if they didn't. I just think Bayern, you're not going to go 2 years in a row of not, especially when you win it, 13 times in a row or something?
I think some of this stuff that happened last year isn't going to happen again. Granted, I expect the top of the Bundesliga table to be extremely competitive. Mentioned Leverkusen. I think Stuttgart's going to be great again. I think Dortmund's going to be a lot better than they were last year in the Bundesliga. I think Leipzig is going to be great. I think Frankfurt's probably going to be even better than they were last year. You know, we all joke about a farmers league, and the bottom of the Bundesliga, competition clearly isn't as good as a Premier League, but I'll go on record and I'll say that the top of the Bundesliga table will perform well in Europe, and just like they did last year, I think the top of the Bundesliga is great, is competitive, is super fun to watch, but Bayern's going to come out on top. All right, some okay stuff in there, some pretty bad stuff. I mean, let's be honest. The Bundesliga did not perform very well in Europe. Leverkusen kind of got shafted by having to play Bayern right away in the Champions League knockouts. I guess Leverkusen, you could say, performed all right in the Champions League. They got whatever it was, fifth or sixth. They ended up pretty comfortably, I think, in that top eight, but it didn't end up mattering. Again, they played Bayern. The rest of the league, I mean, Dortmund sucked for a while, but eventually ended up doing okay, so I could give myself a little bit of credit for that one. Frankfurt, yeah, they did have a good season, but Leipzig, I was a million miles away with that. Leipzig, yeah, no shot. They sucked.
Yeah, kind of a mixed bag there. Tough to predict a lot about the league. Definitely a down year compared to last year for the Bundesliga, and a lot of that can just be attributed to Leverkusen. Sounds like we're going to have a great season for the B in the ABC. But where is Chelsea going to finish in the Premier League?
Nice. Chelsea's gonna finish sixth in the Premier League.
2 years in a row in sixth. Interesting.
Yeah. I think that was the first thing that came into my head. I honestly hadn't thought about a prediction for Chelsea. But I think there's still gonna be some growing pains under Enzo. It wouldn't surprise me to see Chelsea finish better. I'm not gonna lie. Just the talent that they have alone, Palmer alone might carry them a little bit farther. I think Aston Villa got better. Even teams like West Ham got better. Obviously City, obviously Arsenal, Liverpool's good. I think United got a lot better. So the Premier League's just going to be tough. Hold the phone. What was I on thinking that the Premier League was going to be better, first of all? Um, Also, I will say, I remember when we recorded this, I didn't think much about Chelsea prior to recording. So, like, my Chelsea predictions are pretty much on the spot on that day. Um, and I'm okay with predicting sixth, because I did think that the Premier League was going to be a lot better than it was. I looked at some of those transfers, like that came into United, that came into Spurs. I remember thinking that those two teams were going to be a hell of a lot better than whatever 16th and 17th.
Yeah, to be fair, everybody predicted Chelsea sixth at the highest. West Ham and United, yeah, tough scenes for you there because they both were absolute trash. But yeah, Premier League had a slight down year as well. So it's just kind of a random year, if you will. It is disappointing to hear you say sixth. I won't lie. I just think if you do not improve again in this third season with the new ownership, it will be such a failure. And I know it's tough to say that, but you're a historic winning club. You gotta put performances up that show that you are that club. So I have Chelsea finishing fourth. I think they will get Champions League football. On paper, this team is way too talented to not finish top four, especially if they bring in more guys, as rumored potentially. They're so talented. I know paper doesn't always mean everything, but I like the way they've built momentum and started to understand the system that Maresca brings, the way they talk about it, the players and Enzo. I just think they're going to be a strong, cohesive unit, and they can even experiment in the Conference League if need be, which frankly they should run straight through. So I'm confident. I think we're back in the Champions League, baby. Next, I was going to move on.
Okay, just a brief point or two there from me. I want to give you a lot of credit because, like you said, nobody was predicting Chelsea to be fourth. I can tell you that much. And what you said there, you pretty much just nailed it bang on. And like I said, nobody was predicting that. Absolutely nobody was predicting exactly how it went, which was pretty much exactly how you called it to go.
Yeah, no, it feels good to hear that back and have such a solid prediction. They started to understand Maresca's system as the season went on, which is why when they started so hot, even though it wasn't his system, then they had some bumps in the road. Then they finished strong because a lot of it being the talent really showed up when they had guys healthy. Didn't always have guys healthy, but once they did, that talent really was there. And my point about the Conference League, that's precisely what happened. You kind of experiment with some guys and you're able to rest guys and use guys in different ways. So definitely feel great about hearing that.
Super, super special.
Just the top scorers for each respective team.
Oh, okay. Um, well, I think the top scorer for Bayern is going to be Kane.
And what about for Chelsea?
I think Palmer is going to be one.
Fair enough. I just think Kane for sure number one for Bayern, and I think Nkunku scoring the most goals for Chelsea this season. If they bring in an Osimhen, I'd maybe have him as number one.
Well, I guess it depends too. Like if Palmer takes pens, that'll give him an extra couple probably.
It will for sure. And speaking of Palmer,
All right. I actually don't know the full stats about Chelsea, so you'll have to
I
enlighten me.
do.
I know that Palmer and Nkunku were up there because I know Nkunku did end up scoring all those goals in the Conference League. Obviously, we were both right about Kane scoring the most goals for Bayern.
Yeah, Kane, final tally 38. And then for Chelsea, you were correct. Palmer ended with 15. We're doing all competitions here,
Yep.
not just their respective leagues. And Kunku not far behind. People forget he scored so many between the Conference League and I think one Carabao or FA Cup. He had a hat trick. So he ended up with 12, actually, only three behind Palmer.
Nice.
I have Palmer leading the charge for Chelsea for the most assists this season. I think what he provides, whether on the wing or in the middle, is so special. Led the team last year in assists. I think he'll do it again. And I think a player that's very similar to Palmer will have the most assists for Bayern this year.
Is that Elise?
That is Elise.
I'd agree with that.
What about for Chelsea? Most assists.
Honestly, that's something that has never even crossed my mind one bit. Palmer's not a bad guess. Mudryk. No. I'll agree with you. I'll say Palmer.
Fair enough. All right. How about a stat that
Okay, what's the final numbers for Chelsea? Michael Olise definitely had to have had the most for Bayern. He had
just
like
bullshit bringing up Misha Mudryk there, but yeah, final tallies
23 or something, right? For Olise?
18 I had for Elise.
Oh, okay.
And then Palmer, I think he had 12, but leading the way actually in all competitions for Chelsea was Enzo Fernandez with 14.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough there. Let's see what's next.
Maybe gets overlooked. Oftentimes goes to a player that isn't your star, but a very important stat: who will have the most minutes across the entire season, all competitions for each team go?
Ooh, is Neuer a cop out? Can I say Neuer?
Keepers not involved.
Okay. That's a really good question. I might go with Kane or Zane, and I honestly hope it's not either one of them, to be honest.
And for Chelsea?
For Chelsea, ooh, I really have no idea for Chelsea. Let's go with Enzo.
I like the choice of Enzo. For Bayern, I mentioned this earlier in the pod. I said I want Kane to manage his minutes.
I do too.
I don't think they're necessarily going to. I think he's going to end up with the most minutes.
Yeah, me too.
He had the most last year. I just think he's important, and they're going to use him a ton. For Chelsea, I'm going Caicedo. I mentioned he might not start this first match. That means nothing to me. He's so important. Ended the year as the best player. I think he'll be leading the way. But you did mention Enzo. And this next one I have is your surprise or...
Okay, a couple things there. I'm sure the most minutes for Bayern ended up being Kimmich. Obviously, Kane was hurt a bit. Neuer was hurt for a significant amount of the year. Kimmich played every single match, 90 minutes, except for one, I think, which would have been the Stuttgart match that he was injured against. That's just off the dome. I'm not looking at any facts, but it was probably something like that. And then for Chelsea, I feel like both of our guesses were pretty good. I bet Caicedo had more minutes than Enzo Fernandez just because, Chelsea's tough actually because of the Conference League, because of these other tournaments. So you'll have to enlighten me on that one.
Yeah, very close. So you're spot on with Kimmich. The most minutes, 4,377. Kane actually was third on the team in minutes, even with the injuries. So still a very long and tough season for him. But Chelsea, Enzo finished fourth in minutes. Caicedo ended up finishing second. Now, this is across all comps, as you mentioned. He played every Premier League match, so he would have had the most there. But Cucurella finished with the most minutes in total at 3,774. So roughly 600 less minutes than Kimmich, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things about Kimmich. First of all, the guy never rests. I don't know what he's made of. I don't know what he's built with, but he's certainly built different. Because this guy, yeah, international matches, obviously he's the captain of Germany, literally plays every single minute of every single match. And it seems like he has all these coaches held hostage where if they pull him once, he's gonna blackmail them with some horrible information or something because yeah, nobody ever wants to bench the guy. But the other thing about Kimmich I did want to say is he had a down year last year under Tuchel, like probably the worst year of his career or one of the worst years, like since he's become an established player last year. So I do want to give him credit for bouncing back under Kompany, and I want to, I guess, maybe give Kompany credit or just something that wasn't certain is that Kimmich became an integral part of the Kompany system in the central midfield. Like you got to remember, the guy was playing right back when he played under Tuchel, so at least at the end of the year. And it wasn't certain when we recorded this video what things were going to look like for Kimmich.
Yeah, shout out to Kimmich for being a workhorse. Really nice assist today in the Nations League semifinal to Florian Wirtz. I believe Kimmich was playing right back today. At least he was really far over there. So
Yep, yeah, he plays right back pretty much all the time now for the German national team. They have kind of a crisis of that position. I don't really even know who else would play it. And they kind of have a little bit of an overload in the midfield at the moment. So, yeah, I'm gonna have to catch up on that match. I was over at my little brother's fake but real graduation. He made the state tennis tournament, and he will be down in Madison, Wisconsin, playing for the big title when the actual Menominee Falls graduation happens. So, had to go support at the rehearsal, which was his real graduation, and I will definitely have to catch the Nations League semifinals, which Germany lost to Portugal 1-2 later tonight.
I do have interest in some of these international games, but they're tough when it's during the week.
All right, let's look at some more predictions.
Breakout player for each team.
Mm.
And for me, it wouldn't be a huge surprise, but I think breakout player will be Enzo Fernandez for Chelsea. I think he's really going to show his strengths in this Enzo Maresca system. Some believe he won't. I think he really will. And for Bayern, I think Tell is really going to be the breakout guy this year, mostly because you love him so much and have huge hopes for him, but that's my guy for Bayern.
Yep. Matisse Tell is also my guy for Bayern Munich, definitely. I think I said 20 goal season in this episode already, so we'll stick with that. And for Chelsea, I was going to say Enzo, but I think I don't want to say that because you said that, and I can't go 2 for 2, same as you, especially after you. It looks really bad on me. So this is, I don't know if this is necessarily surprise, but I'm going to say Reece James because he was injured for so much of last year. Maybe a little bit forgotten about. Reece James.
Comeback player of the year.
All right. First of all, rest in peace to Tell in his tenure at Bayern Munich, I should say, looking like it's gonna be over.
Tough.
Yeah, super, super tough. I think I was predicting 20 goal assists, like goal contributions, but either way, it wasn't even close because I looked it up the other day and he had five. Um, across, yeah, Bundesliga, Premier League, everything with Spurs. So, um, just tough, tough scenes from Tal. Obviously, the guy doesn't fit under Vincent Kompany's system at all. Kompany kind of, I think, needs more of a touchline winger on the left hand side, and Tel's more of like a second striker. So we'll see if Spurs end up buying him or if he goes somewhere else, or if I guess he goes back to Bayern and ends up being like Kane's backup or something. But yeah, I think he just works best in the left half spaces, which obviously Musiala occupies, Davies occupies, and Bayern's system under Kompany just doesn't really allow for his style of play, unfortunately.
Yeah, tough for that one. I think you can make an argument that your Reece James prediction was accurate in the sense that he had a breakout for playing the amount of games that he did over the last 3 years. This last year was the most he's ever played. And you could also argue Enzo Fernandez had a breakout year. Definitely was his best season ever as a professional footballer. Certainly with Chelsea, had his most goals and assists, and really had an awesome year. I think just finished second to Palmer in total goal contributions. So great to see that we were locked in on Chelsea at least.
Yeah, good picks from us there for Chelsea. And yeah, I mean, again, like put yourself in our shoes before the season started. I do think that James was a little bit forgotten about because of how much he had been injured at that point. So, all right, what else do we got here?
All right, signing of the year, your best signing.
Ooh. Sorry, pause for a second. You're gonna say Olise for sure. I can't remember if I said Olise or Polinia, but I know I was like really hyped on both of them. So one of them turned out to be amazing and the other one turned out to be a flop. So let's see which one I say. Okay, I you could say Olise for Bayern, but I'm actually gonna go with João Palhinha.
No. I'm saying Lise. As I said, I just think he's so good. For Chelsea, I want to do under the radar here. I'm going with Tosin Aduriabayo. That could be so brutal the way I pronounce that, but I wanted to give it a shot. I think he's the leader type, and center back is iffy for Chelsea. I think he could really step in and become the Eric Dyer of Chelsea.
A friend. Wow, shout out to Eric Dyer there. We talk about that guy so much. We just love him.
X.
Yeah, so yeah, Polina obviously turned out to be a flop. I remember I don't know if this was my rationale at this point or not because I don't remember this, but I remember thinking that when we signed him, he was really going to like bolster our defense because at that point I wasn't sold on Upamecano or Kim. And obviously Upamecano flourished under Kompany, Kim did not. So I remember thinking that Polina was going to be used as just such a strong destroyer number six. And you know, got unlucky with injuries, but also just I don't know if Kompany doesn't like him or if he doesn't show up in training or what, but really hardly played at all. And when he did, he was fine, but not nothing like he was really touted to be after an over year long pursuit of him.
Yeah, it's been tough for Joe. I'm not really sure what the deal is there. I won't speculate, but obviously Elise, clear best signing of the year for Bayern. No other way to really go about that one. And then, my selection there of Tosin, there really isn't a bona fide number one great signing that Chelsea had from their summer transfer window. So, maybe you could say Sancho just because he had some moments here and there, but Tosin, all things considered, did he play all the time? No. But I compared him to a Dyer, a guy that comes off the bench. I mentioned he's a leader. He's well known as one of the best leaders in that locker room. They call him Uncle Tosin. He's like the oldest guy on the squad. So
Yeah, what is he like
I really do.
27?
Yeah, and I think he ended up being just what they need, and he'll be a squad player probably going forward here. But sometimes that can be a great signing, especially because it was free.
Yeah, just funny. He's whatever he is, 27 or so, and the oldest player on Chelsea, probably the youngest player on Bayern. But yeah, Olise for Bayern signing of the summer. I would argue Olise was the signing of the world. He should be up in that conversation of best signing of last summer for top five leagues, in my opinion.
Well, wait till your prediction for Chelsea's best signing, and then we'll decide.
No, no. I'm gonna go with Guiu, I think, for Chelsea. But if they sign Oshiman, we'll give it to him. Oh my God, why did I say that? I don't even know if I even knew anything about Giyu when that signing was made. So I think that was just a total shot in the dark for me. I think it was I was like still unsure of Nico Jackson, and I was thinking that Giyu was maybe gonna like pair up with Jackson and play in tandem, but whatever the case, that did not happen whatsoever. So that was the funniest guess for sure of anything. That was even funnier than us guessing Tell is the breakout player.
Although I would say Giyu is a good signing. It's not a flop. He scored the second most goals in the entire conference league, I want to say. And you buy him for 5 million euros. So you're not going to lose money. At some point, you're either going to sell him for more than that. He's probably going to go on loan next year to either a Premier League squad or a championship squad. So he might not be the best signing. But I love Mark.
Yeah, he's a fine signing for sure, but the way that I thought he was going to be used, that did not turn out to be the case whatsoever.
Yeah, zero research into that pick. Expected letter grade for the manager. Kind of an interesting one here, but based on your prediction for the year, what would be your letter grade for both managers?
Okay, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be right about Kompany, but I think I might be so wrong about Enzo. Let's just see. Based on my prediction for Enzo, I'm gonna have to go with a C because that's kind of just, you know, in the middle, growing pains, but not detrimental to the point where we're slipping so far to mid-table. For Vincent Company, I'm going to go with a B, a solid B. And maybe we'll get to a little bit more afterwards because I do have a prediction for the Pokal and for Champions League as well, but I think it's going to be a B. I think that the attack is going to be so good and so electric that a lot of the holes that will be there on defense might not matter as much when it comes to Bundesliga ball, but I think will show their face in other competitions, other matches. I don't think it's going to be completely smooth sailing, but I think that his style is going to be a refreshing change compared to Tuchel's.
Spot on with Company. I have him as expected B. You need to win the Bundesliga, so that's expected. I can't give you an A just for doing that. Don't think they'll get it done in the Champions League, getting as far as they'd like. That's why I'm at B. Enzo, I'm saying A because I have them top four Champions League.
Fair.
And the next category that we'll be talking about here, I'll explain even more why it will be an A because Chelsea could be bathing in some trophies this season.
Wow.
And as we get to that, what?
Okay, I was 100% on with my team prediction and what I thought about Company. That I could just use that clip today and I think it would describe how I feel about this season. Um yeah, with Enzo as well, I knew I was gonna kind of give him a little bit of a lower grade, although a C is average. I think if you look at it now, I would say results wise, I would give Enzo an A. Playing style wise, probably like a B or something.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually listening to a podcast today, and they were talking about letter grades for Enzo Maresca, and a fan that wrote in made a good point, and pretty much exactly how you just described it. Results, they did exactly what we wanted them to do, above what was expected, seeing that everybody predicted them to not get Champions League. So an A for that. But then, when you consider some of the roller coaster ups and downs of the year, Are they really playing the most fun and awesome to watch style? Probably not. How much does that matter? We'll see. But yeah, ultimately you might end up at around a B plus, I would say, which I think still describes the season well and is good for Enzo.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's see what else we got here.
What are your trophy predictions for each team? This could be league, the side tournaments in German and English, and UEFA as well.
Okay, I'm going to give Bayern one trophy, Bundesliga title, as we mentioned. I think that they're going to exit the Pokal relatively early. I don't think they're going to lose to Ulm. I think they're going to beat Ulm. Wait until later in the week to see this preview because our match preview graphics really are going to be something special this year. Wait for a proper prediction for that coming out this week. But I do think Bayern's going to lose relatively early in the Pokal. Something just gives me that vibe, honestly, with the team, with Kompany, and also it's just what Bayern seems destined to do these last couple of years. They just haven't performed.
I think they're getting that Bundesliga trophy. I predicted them to come in first. I think they win the Pokal. I don't know enough about this tournament. It seems like a little lesser of a domestic tournament in Germany, but I think when you're a first-year manager with a good squad, you want your fans to get as many trophies as possible. So I think they actually will be motivated to do well. I understand they're in the Champions League, so they're going to try to do well there too, but I just think they're going to take as many opportunities as possible to get back to winning ways. They didn't have winning ways last year. I think they're getting back to some winning ways.
Well, if they win the domestic double, I'll have to buy you a cheeseburger or something because that'd be quite special. I do have an oddly specific Champions League prediction. If you want to hear that now, if you want to hear that later,
might as well say it now. Yeah.
Okay, so I think Bayern Munich is going to advance to the the knockout round of the final 8 of the Champions League, and they're going to be motivated because the final is in Munich this year, so that could be some extra spice, some extra icing on the cake for Bayern. However, I think they're going to lose to Real Madrid wherever they play them. So if they're on the opposite side of that knockout round, that would mean they're going to lose to Real Madrid in the final. If they face them in the quarters, they're going to lose to them in the quarters, face them in the semis, etc. That's my prediction for the Champions League.
Was the final not in Munich this year?
No, it was in Wembley.
Oh, you're right.
The Euros was in Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably what I'm thinking of.
Yep. And then I guess I'll give Chelsea a trophy, though. How about the Conference League?
Well, if they don't win the Conference League, somebody's getting fired. That's for sure. My prediction for Chelsea, I have them going to the Champions League. You don't get a trophy for that. It's a good accomplishment. They're definitely getting that Conference League. If they don't, it's downright embarrassing.
Hold on. Sorry. I need to rewind a second. You're predicting Kane's going to have 2 trophies? That just dawned on me.
Maybe he got hurt before the season even started.
Oh, brutal. Okay,
it is wild.
Continue.
A blind squirrel finds a nut, ladies and gentlemen. So Conference League for Chelsea, I think they're lifting the FA Cup.
Wow.
I just think Chelsea, the vibes, once again, I hate to say vibes again. It's such a buzzword these days, but boy, oh boy, they're so high for me right now. I think they're getting something else, an extra piece of hardware. I just think they've gotten close last year. Historically, the last few years they haven't done great in Wembley, but I think they're getting that FA Cup too. And it's going to be awesome.
It sounds like you and the vibes both might be high right now.
Maybe I am. Who knows?
That would be awesome.
And that wraps it up for the predictions I have.
Okay, so yeah, my predictions for Bayern's Champions League and Pokal were decent. You could say Bayern went out in the Pokal relatively early. They got the first 2 wins against Ulm and then Mainz, but then they did bow out to Bayer Leverkusen in what I believe would have been the round of 16, which is too early. I mean, Bayern just, they have been bad in the cup lately. It'd be nice to win that this year. I think a domestic double. I think a double is kind of the next logical step. You know, they got back to winning ways in the Bundesliga, as predicted, of course. But yeah, and then the Champions League prediction, I actually did sneak it in there that I thought they would get to the quarterfinals, which is what happened. But yeah, not against Real Madrid. We saw Bayern Munich's Champions League kryptonite, maybe Real Madrid, or just the Champions League kryptonite of everybody, Real Madrid, go out on the other side of the bracket to Arsenal and Declan Rice's three free kick goals or whatever it was. Um, in that one. So, yeah, interesting, fun predictions there. I'm happy with my overall predictions for Bayern Munich as a team. Obviously, the player predictions were missing the mark, but yeah, how do you feel about your Chelsea predictions? Because I guess I got it right. I predicted Conference League, although I obviously did sixth in the Premier League.
Yeah, you got the trophy spot on, one each. Chelsea didn't come close to getting another trophy in the FA or Carabao Cup, so was wrong there. A little overconfident on Enzo maybe, but that helped the rest of my predictions. And overall, I think it really showed that Chelsea ended up having a great season with players that had some individual accolades as well. So, all in all, just a great season.
Yeah, so there you go. A little stroll down memory lane for me and you predicting Bayern Munich and Chelsea seasons at the beginning of this year. Some were right, some were way wrong. But yeah, I mean, the other thing I'll say is just stay tuned, subscribe to the Always Bayern Chelsea YouTube channel here because we're gonna have some more cool end of the season stuff coming. A collab again for me with our Ukrainian friend Oleg talking about the Bayern Munich season as a whole. So again, stick around. You got anything else to add?
Lots coming up. Lots coming up.
Yeah, stay tuned for the Club World Cup as well. Of course, we'll be there. Mia San Mia.
Up to Chelsea.